I don't read a lot of books. I read the Bible a lot. But I do have books that I'll read throughout the year. I like to get a few of them down at least each year. And I thought, you know what I could do is just put together a little recommended book list. Listen, I am not trying to be like high-minded or you should read what I read or anything like that, because probably some of you are way ahead of where I'm at on all this. But if you don't know what to read, or if you're looking for something that could be profitable, I have some ideas for you. And after service, if you're interested in any of these, we put some little papers back there at the hub and you can grab them. It's just a little book list, if you'd like to check off a couple of these. But I thought I'd show you some examples of what I'm talking about. Now, if you've been around me for long, you're familiar with some of these. Some of these we've even worked through as a church. I think all of these books I've read at least twice. Some of them I've read multiple times. So these are books that are that to me they made a huge impact on my life. So one of them, let's see, maybe I'll do one of this guy's first because I have a couple by him. I mean, truth be told, I am a Jack Hayford homer. I love him so much. But if you've ever been interested in learning like the value of Christian disciplines, and by Christian disciplines, I mean the disciplines of things like fasting, prayer, water baptism like we did last week, spiritual gifts, reading the word, even the practice of solitude, getting by yourself and just spending time with the Lord. If you've ever wondered what is the actual power and value behind those disciplines, Jack Hayford writes about it chapter by chapter in this book. It's called Living the Spirit-Formed Life. And I love this book. I feel like this is one of those books that every single Christian should read. I've never heard somebody like Jack Hayford be able to take things that are very spiritual and make them accessible and not weird. And that's been a challenge in Pentecostal church, believe me, is not taking things and making them weird, right? That has just been a real challenge in charismatic circles. Nobody was better at it than Jack Hayford and teaching on it and bringing it to a place where it's like, yes, that makes sense and it's applicable. You hear him talk about spiritual language, and you'll be like, you know what? I want to seek for that gift as well from the Holy Spirit. He's so good at it. So Living the Spirit-Formed Life. This is another book right here by Jim Cymbala. This is an old book called Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire. If you've never read this book, my gosh, there is something in it that will just light your soul on fire for Jesus when you hear what God can do in the most desperate of situations and when you see God's power. When I first read this book, I'd been saved about a year and a half, 2 years, and I was youth pastoring at the House of Prayer. And I got so fired up, I went to my pastor and I said, Pastor, I would like to preach a week-long revival at our church. And he's all, no. True story. He's like, nope. I'm like, oh, okay. But still, really good book. Yeah. This book right here is a book by Jerry Cook called Love, Acceptance, and Forgiveness. Again, this is an older book, but if you're wondering how to relate with today's culture that just seems to be getting more and more like unrelatable and disconnected from your values, from even things that you think are even somewhat acceptable in any way whatsoever. If you're looking for an understanding of how to love and care for people no matter what. Love, Acceptance, and Forgiveness by Jerry Cook. Oh, right? It's so good. Here's another one. Well, I'll throw in another Jack Hayford one. You're all familiar with this because we did this as we were going through the book of Nehemiah. But Rebuilding the Real You. This book right here impacted and changed my life as much as any book I've ever read other than the Bible. So Rebuilding the Real You was huge for me as far as really going in and helping me navigate with the help of the Holy Spirit, the repair that needed to happen in my soul. This is another book. I hesitate to recommend this one because this guy is out there, right? But I trust that you'll read it with godly wisdom and be able to chew up the meat and spit out the bones. And that's Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller. I don't know if you've ever read it before, but Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller. You know, sometimes as Christians, it's really hard not to slip into being judgmental and critical, especially when the world just seems to be getting more out there and more, like I was even talking about with the last one, just kind of disconnected and crazy and weird. Donald Miller, he leans so far into grace that it's almost like, that's not okay, bro. But I find that with myself, I tend to lean into, by nature, being more of a Pharisee than being more of somebody who leans into easy believism, right? And books like this tend to drag me back towards loving people unconditionally, right? So Blue Like Jazz, awesome book by Donald Miller. I've read a lot of his stuff, and it's all the same way, right? You know, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater with him. And then this book right here, you've probably heard me talk about it. It's not even a Christian book. It's Education of a Wandering Man by Louis L'Amour. And as far as I know, Louis L'Amour was not even a believer. And I know probably if you're familiar with Louis L'Amour, you think of all the Western books, the Sacketts and all that stuff. This is not that. This is his story written by him of what he thought of education and how he approached being an educated man. And I can tell you the short, the kind of spoiler in it, but it's not a spoiler, is that he wasn't finding it necessarily in colleges and universities. Now, I'm not, of course, opposed to somebody going to college or going to universities. And sometimes there's a vocation that you really need that specific training to go, to be able to do the career you want to go into. And so sometimes you have to go. Not always, though. I'm also, just truth be told, I'm not a proponent that every single person should or needs to go to college. And I have some legitimate concerns about our colleges and universities in our country, because if you just judge things by their fruit, some of what they're putting out is not all that great. I have a friend on Facebook who said that he's all, okay, I'm ready to pursue my PhD. He's highly educated and he's going after his PhD. And he had a picture of this stack of books that he has to go through and kind of master in order for him to get this PhD. And out of all those books that he had stacked there, to me, 80% of them were just trash. Just trash. Like stuff that would be filled with inaccuracy and lies. And I thought, isn't that like the world to dangle the reward or the carrot of this degree and this status, but in order to get to this mark and get this degree, you have to be an expert in things that aren't true, right? And I find it's a big problem in our world right now is that people want an education. They want to be able to invest in themselves. They want to be able to grow. But so much of the education system is actually just poisoning people in order for them to hit those marks and say, I accomplished this. he looked at education in a completely different way. And he was plenty accomplished. So, he accomplished things by traveling, seeing places, and being a voracious reader. He would read about 100 books a year. So there's different ways to be educated. There's different ways to grow. And when I read his book, it always challenges me to dig in deeper to other things. Again, I'm not knocking college. I'm not knocking those things. And like I said, sometimes you have to go to be qualified to do the certain career that you're wanting to pursue, but not always. Not always. To me, college is another thing that people should be intentional about, right? Don't just go to randomly go like, I think I should. No, go because you need something specific from it to go where God's calling you to go. So, just some reading goals for this year, Maybe you just pick 2 or 3 books and you're like, I would like to finish these by the end of the year. You'll be surprised at how much fruit that can bear in your soul.